Hello and welcome to this section. The content of this lesson is mainly to explain the operation of application creation. In this section, there are three knowledge points, namely, the creation of application, the selection of application type, and the creation of main application. First, we come to the application to create this knowledge point. When we create the application, we can directly enter the editor address in the browser, editor.hikoda.com, and then enter such an interface. We can directly create an application. In addition, we can also go to the workbench. There is a new application label in the first volume label of the workbench. When you click it, you will also come to an address of our editor. You can also create an application here. On the left side of the scene where our application is created, there is a type of application creation that we want to select. On the right side, there are some recently edited works product. If you want to edit a recently opened work, you can easily open it on the right side. Next, we will explain the choice of application type. Currently, we support the development of the following three types of application in HiCode, namely, our web. There are three types of app: small program, small game, and WeChat small program native widget. The basic development mode of each type of application is consistent, but there are different widget and basic configuration settings. Therefore, once we create it, we cannot modify the type of its application, so we must decide the type of the application before development. First of all, we have the first application: web app, small program. After this kind of application, we will call it web application. In essence, it is a web page application. It can be published as a pure web page application, that is, an HTML web page, or a packaging service provided through the HiCode platform, and it can be packaged as our small program, native application, H5, etc. However, whether it is a small program or a native application, the packaging service of HiCode platform embeds the pages we make into other application through WebView, i.e. the method of browser embedding. At the same time, HiCode provides a variety of interface layers, allowing us to call the interface of the small program or the native application in the application, such as geographic location, device interface, file interface weight. When creating a web app, we can choose the stage with relative positioning or the stage with absolute positioning. The page of the stage with relative positioning defaults to the relative positioning environment, that is, the traditional streaming layout, while the page of the stage with absolute positioning defaults to the absolute positioning environment, that is, the user manually specifies the position of each object. If you were familiar with the IH5 platform before, you can choose the absolute positioning environment for editing. His experience is almost the same as that of the IH5 platform. The description of relative positioning and absolute positioning layout will be introduced in detail in subsequent chapters. The type of our web and app applets is that we will choose this type for creation under most conditions. The second type is our WeChat game. WeChat game is a special type of applet launched by the Applet platform. When we apply for an applet, we also need to select the type of application as game before we can use this kind of applet game. Small games, we can choose 2D small games or 3D small games. When we choose 2D small games, its interior is a pure canvas environment. When we choose 3D small games, its interior is a 3D world. Because the small games of WeChat small programs must specify a matching environment, we can only create pure 2D small games or pure 3 small games. D small game cannot be nested. The third is our native widget type of WeChat applet, which is a unique type of WeChat applet. We use the native widget provided by WeChat applet to us, and on this basis we have carried out a series of extensions of widget. This type of applet and our first web applet have their own advantages. We need to create one according to our own needs. Here we can simply say a difference between the two kinds of WeChat applets. For the development platform of WeChat applets, it is mainly three parts, including our WeChat built-in browser, built-in JS parsing engine, and native WeChat app application communication layer. The built-in browser is responsible for one rendering of the page, and the JS parser is responsible for the logical processing through the native app application layer to carry out an interaction. The original intention of WeChat design is to separate the page rendering and logical operation, so as to better control the structure and neatness of the application, and improve the performance of the application to a certain extent. In addition, the WeChat app further provides the WebView widget, which can nest an online web page application. At this time, the rendering of the UI and the parsing of the JS logic are consistent with the common web page application, all of which are implemented in the web browser. Therefore, the WeChat applet provides two implementation methods, one is default parsing, and the other is embedded using WebView. These two methods correspond to the two types selected in HeCode. If we use the default system parsing, remember that our rendering and JS parsing are separated, then we should choose the native widget of WeChat applet. If we want to use an embedded method of WebView, that is, the operation of pure web pages, so that rendering and JS parsing can be integrated, then we need to choose our default such a WeChat applet released by WebApp. After understanding the principles of these two small programs, let's compare the advantages and disadvantages between them. First of all, we talk about a native WeChat app. The native WeChat app supports the build of personal version of the app. This is because our web widget is in WeChat, and it is only for the opening of our enterprise WeChat app. Therefore, the WeChat app applied by the individual owner cannot use our embedded WebView, so you have no way to a small program you have made is packaged and nested through WebView. So if you are a small program released in your own name, you can only use one of our original widget to make a small WeChat program. For example, you need to use a live widget of a WeChat applet, or its advertising widget. These widget are components provided by applets in the WebView, and cannot be nested in the web page. Therefore, we can only add them through a native applet. In addition, its first screen loads faster, because for our web for the app version of the applet, the remote URL address needs to be loaded remotely through the web page widget, so there will be an additional loading process when the applet is opened for the first time. The application package of the original applet group is uploaded directly to the applet platform, and WeChat will automatically cache it. Therefore, every time we open the application for the first time, it will be 2-3 seconds faster. Of course, the web version of the small program is not useless. It has very good support for our dynamic animation. This is because the widget UI rendering and the logic engine of our original version of the WeChat small program are separated, which leads to the poor performance of our animation control. Most of the animation will have a cotone that is obviously not commercially available. The original small program widget in the removal of this part of an animation-related feature. But in the web version of a small program, because its essence is a page application, naturally supports all the animation functions in the page application. In addition, because it is essentially a web page, we can update it dynamically, because as long as we update the content in the web page, the content in the applet will change automatically, so we don't need to conduct a secondary audit of the applet. Similarly, since its essence is a web, it is a series of features supporting our canvas, 3D world, and so on. Although our default native app also provides us with such a canvas, its feature is very simple, and it cannot do all kinds of canvases provided by HeCode, and all kinds of objects in the 3D world. Therefore, the feature related to Canvas and the 3D world is only available in the web version of the app. For example, if we want to make a feature that prints a very cool poster, then we are going to use a small program in the web version. In addition, because our external app has jumped away from a series of restrictions of the small program platform, it has more abundant extended widget, so if you want to use some special widget, you also need to choose our VIP version of the small program. After talking about so many reasons, have you been dizzy? It doesn't matter. Let me summarize a very, very important point for you here, that is, when we enter a development environment, let's first ask ourselves, do we want to develop a WeChat applet, and then ask ourselves, do you need to use a native interface for the WeChat applet you develop? If you need to use its series of native interfaces, you can choose our default WeChat applet development environment. If you don't use its series of native interfaces, but just want to embed a web page for use, and you also have an enterprise microsignal, you can choose our WebView version for development. Then, if you need to develop a small game in WeChat, you can choose our small game 2D and 3D environment for development. So in addition to developing a native WeChat applet, calling its interface, and developing a WeChat 2D and 3D game, we can choose our first environment for creation in any other case. So you can understand that unless you want to make a WeChat applet or a WeChat game, you will choose our first environment for creation. Next, we will talk about the creation process of the main application. Before that, we will talk about a concept of the main application with you. It is also very simple for our grouped app. In a word, the application backend in the group can use the same set of grouped app database. In other words, if you make a multi-terminal application, and you want to use the same set of backend databases in this multi-terminal application, then you can use the method of creating a main application to make a production at this time. Then how to create a main application? Here we can open an application that you have created before, and then select our new grouped app in the menu bar of the file. When you click the new grouped app, it will prompt you to upload a cover and a title of the main application. Here we can input a series of content at will, and then click OK. When we click OK, we can find that it lets us start to choose an application scene for a creation. Let me give you an example. For example, there is a platform for a set of applets here, and then there is the applets side, and then click Create to see that we have entered a main application. We can compare the main application with the common application. Here, I open an original application casually and see whether it is in the menu bar the main application is selected. In our main application, there is a menu selection of the main application management. When I click the group to use the menu management, it can let me choose to embed an application into the group or create an application in the group. If I want the content of another group to be used in this group, I can click Application in a new group here. For example, in addition to the small program side, it also has a backend management side, so this side is a backend, and then we click Create to find that it has become an interface of the backend. In our main application, I can click Development to switch back and forth, and view this in the main application management A type in a main application of the. As for how to use the main application, we will give you a detailed explanation in the follow-up courses. That's all the content of this section. Thank you for watching.